A solid boot slammed into Kale Rhine's back, sending him face-first into the filth-slicked floor of the Valerix detention tunnel. Pain radiated through his ribs as the armored officer sneered behind him. "You don't belong here, ground-blood scum," she hissed in that sharp, chittered dialect of hers. "You're less than shadow ash." Kale lifted his head slowly. Blood dripped from his lip, but he smiled anyway. "Funny," he said through clenched teeth. "I was thinking the same about your hospitality." The officer, Zara, her name was, paused mid-step, her slitted emerald eyes narrowing. The glow of the corridor panels made her violet veins shimmer. Her hand twitched toward the stun rod at her belt. Kale didn't flinch. 3 months in this hole had burned the instinct to fear clean out of him. Zara crouched next to him, her face inches from his. "You're lucky we haven't pulped you into nutrient gel." She stood and pointed down the corridor. "Crawl." Kale stayed still. "Crawl," she said again, voice harder. He tilted his head, gave her a look. "Make me." For a second, she looked ready to bash his skull in. Then, muttering something harsh in Valari, she turned and stalked off. Her boots echoed off the metal as she disappeared around the bend. Kale leaned back against the wall, tasting iron in his mouth. His whole body ached. That was life in Block 6, pain and monotony, rinse and repeat. Until today. The next morning was different. Instead of the usual 2 guards with grudge sticks, 6 armored enforcers arrived at his cell. His wrists were bound, his bare feet scraped the cold floor, and none of them said a word. They didn't drag him toward the barracks or the pit. This time, they took him deeper, through checkpoints he hadn't even known existed. When the blast doors opened to reveal sterile white corridors and buzzing tech rigs, Kale understood. The medical sector. The rumors were true. The white zone. No one came back from here. A young Valari tech, barely more than a girl by the look of her, glanced up from her screen. Her mouth opened slightly when she saw him. "Human?" she asked. "Contractor," Kale said flatly. "Earthborn. Came to build transport hubs. Got jailed instead." She didn't smile. Just pointed toward the scanning pod. "Get in." "What is this?" he muttered. "Routine checkup before you space me." "Council-mandated genetic evaluation," she replied. "I'm flattered." "Don't be. Lie down." He did. They strapped him in, fixed circular nodes across his scalp, and a vibration thrummed deep in his spine. The scan began. Then something changed. Red lights blinked. The technician frowned. Recalibrated. Ran it again. Another flash. Data flooded the screen. 99.8% match, the system read. Genetic confirmation, paternal link verified. Subject Rhine. Bloodline registered. The tech went pale. This isn't possible." Kale squinted. "Something break?" She didn't answer. Just slammed her hand onto a red panel. Within seconds, 2 figures entered, a robed medical overseer and a uniformed council officer. "What is it?" the robed man demanded. The girl stepped aside. "It flagged a noble pairing," she said quietly. "From the fetus currently developing in subject Virea Rai." Everyone froze. The officer's voice was razor-sharp. "Pull the sequencing tree." More overlays appeared. Confirmations. Every scan aligned. No room for error. "Virea Rai?" Kale asked, baffled. "I don't even know her." "No one said you did," the officer replied. "It was a clinical fertilization. But there was a mismatch. A donor switch." Kale stared at them. "So. I'm a dad. By accident?" "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "That's gonna be an amazing conversation." The technician whispered, "She's already on her way." Kale blinked. "Excuse me?" She demanded to see the match herself. "Oh, great," he muttered. "This is gonna go beautifully." The restraints disengaged with a hiss just as the doors slid open. She entered like a storm wrapped in silk and fire, Virea Rai, heir to the third house of Valerix. She radiated rage. "That," she snarled, pointing at Kale, "is not the father of my child." Kale gave her a bloodied grin. "Wish I could argue." She turned to the physician. "Explain this farce." The man was clearly terrified. "Genetic scans were run 3 times, my lady. The fetus matches this man's profile with 99.8% certainty. Neurotrace confirms. There's no mistake." Virea looked Kale up and down like he was something scraped off her boot. "I've never seen him in my life." "You sure?" Kale said dryly. "Maybe it was a wild night." "Speak again," she snapped, "and I'll silence you myself." But he wasn't grinning anymore. His voice softened. "You really don't remember?" Her glare was icy. "Then someone else used my blood." The physician interrupted. "This was artificial. Donor profile 9. Certified and isolated." But during gene splice correction, human DNA was introduced. Kale Ryan was in correctional scans at the time. His ID got mixed. She went still. "You're telling me," she said quietly, "that a prisoner's DNA was used to fertilize the heir of a ruling house?" Kale chuckled. "Guess I'm more important than I look." A glass shattered. She'd thrown it. "Get him out of my sight," she shouted. Guards stepped forward, but the physician raised a hand. "My lady, under council law, paternal proximity is protected. You cannot legally deny the father access during active gestation without high tribunal approval." "You're quoting laws at me." "They're not optional." Virea turned slowly. "So because of your mistake, I have to bring this dirt scum into my home?" Kale shrugged. "Scum with amazing cheekbones." "Shut up." She stared at the physician. "If he breathes wrong, I'll kill him. Council law or not." "There's one more complication," the tech added nervously. "The fetus." It responded to him. Everyone paused. When he entered, neuroactivity spiked. Accelerated heart rate. Recognition patterns. Kale's voice was quiet. "I was the only one in the room when the pod scanned." Virea's hand hovered over her stomach. "Take him to my estate," she muttered. "Shall we sedate him?" "If you must. I don't want his voice echoing when I arrive." As the guards moved to grab him, Kale spoke one last time. "You're furious. I get it. You didn't choose me. I didn't choose this. But that life inside you, she's half of me. And no matter what happens next, you don't get to erase that." Virea didn't speak again for almost 2 hours after he was escorted out. She just stood in the clinic, replaying the scans. Every time Kale's voice entered the frame, the fetus stirred. It wasn't just blood. It was bond. And Virea hated it. Kale stood awkwardly in the great marble foyer of the Rai estate. 2 armored guards flanked him, and his wrists bore faint red marks where the cuffs had been. The high ceilings loomed above him, lit by soft violet light from floating orbs, but there was no warmth to the place, just cold, expensive silence. Then Virea appeared on the upper balcony. "Follow," she said. No greeting. No warning. Kale was led to a side wing, smaller, plainer, but still gilded with luxury. A single room. No locks, but plenty of surveillance. She pointed inside. "You are here because law demands it," she said, tone razor thin. "Not because I welcome you. Guards are posted on every floor. Speak only when addressed." Enter no wings except the one assigned to you. You eat, sleep, and vanish. Kale smirked. Sounds like a marriage. She ignored that. Why aren't you afraid? Because I've already lived in a hole for 3 months. Your people tried to beat me into paste. If you wanted me dead, I'd be dust already. She studied him for a heartbeat too long. Then turned. I didn't ask for this either, Kale said quietly. No, she said over her shoulder. But you're not walking away. Not because of you, he added. Because of her. She hesitated. Her. Your daughter, he said. Our daughter. She spun. Do not use that word. Kale's eyes didn't drop. Then what do I call her? Nothing. You don't even know her name. Do you? He asked. She opened her mouth. Closed it. That night, as Kale lay staring at the high ceiling, he thought of the look in her eyes, the fire, the fear, the fury. A woman caught in a cage she'd helped design. He heard footsteps outside. Then a whisper. One word. Raylia. Her voice. The next morning, Kale was in the courtyard doing push-ups beneath the pale sun when he noticed her watching from the upper balcony. You know, he said without looking, it's rude to stare. I'm making sure you're not trying to escape, she replied. He stood, shirtless, sweat running down his back. No weapons, he said. Just push-ups. Discipline, she noted, raising an eyebrow. Interesting word for a convict. I was a contractor. Not military. Not espionage. Just bridges. Between what? Prisons. He smiled. Between cities. One collapsed. They called it sabotage. I got blamed. And you didn't resist. I didn't beg. She didn't respond. Then, uncharacteristically, what did Earth do to make you like this? He met her eyes. Earth didn't do it. You did. She turned without a word and vanished into the estate's interior. 3 days passed. Viraya avoided the east wing. She never addressed Kale directly, only through her house steward. But she knew he was there. She could feel him, like gravity in her bones. Every time he walked near, the child kicked. The medtech confirmed it. Consistent neural spikes, she said. Increased motor activity. It's not random. She's responding to his voice. Viraya said nothing. Just left the room. That night, she stood outside his door for almost 10 minutes. Then finally knocked. Kale opened it shirtless, expression neutral. What? Stop training at night. It's disruptive. I've got energy to burn. Tried ignoring you. That didn't work. Why haven't you asked to leave? She asked suddenly. He leaned against the doorframe. Because I'm not done. Done with what? He stepped closer, just enough to be heard. Learning what kind of woman would rather erase her child than stain her legacy. She slapped him. The sound echoed. Do that again, she whispered, trembling, and I won't stop. You won't like what happens, he said, voice tight. She turned and walked away. Later that night, Viraya couldn't sleep. The child stirred constantly, a low echo pulsing inside her. She drifted to the atrium for air. Kale was already there, sitting in the dark. Without speaking, she sat beside him. Minutes passed. You came to build a bridge, she said at last. He nodded. You got me instead. I don't want you to submit, he replied softly. Then what do you want? He leaned close enough to see her. The truth. She kissed him. It was fast, sharp, unthinking. He kissed her back harder. They moved like heat and fury, colliding into the wall, their limbs tangling. Clothes tore. Breath gasped. Her hands clawed his back. His mouth burned against her skin. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't gentle. It was survival. By the end, they lay tangled on the floor, breathing hard. She turned away. "Don't speak," she whispered. He didn't. By morning, they were strangers again. She sat at the edge of the bed, jacket half-zipped. "You regret it already?" Cale asked. "It didn't mean anything," she said. "You were never more than an error." He laughed bitterly. "You should work on your pillow talk." She left the room. That night, a black envelope slid under Cale's door. No name. No insignia. Just a short note. "You deserve to know the truth." Inside was a data key. Cale stared at it for 5 long minutes. Then plugged it in. The screen blinked. A man appeared. Lab uniform. Haggard. Pale. "My name is Dr. Solon Vex," he said. "If you're seeing this, I'm probably already gone." Cale froze. 3 months ago, a recalibration glitch in the sequencing core led to an unauthorized genetic crossmatch. Your DNA, Cale Rhine, was never approved. It was flagged for deletion. But during a scan, your sample was wrongly catalogued and later paired with noblewoman Virea's embryo request. By the time I caught the error, it was locked. Solon's voice cracked. "They ordered me to bury the logs. Said she would never know. They were wrong." The video cut out. Cale didn't think. He just ran. Found her in the sparring hall, slamming her foot into a combat dummy. He threw the data key at her. She caught it. Played it. Watched everything. Then stood still for a long, long time. Cale stepped forward. "You were never supposed to know. They lied to both of us." Still nothing. "They didn't just use me," he said. "They used you." At last, she whispered, "No." He blinked. "No. I'm not stuck with this," she said. "I'm changed." Her voice was low, trembling with fury. "This child was meant to be proof of legacy. That I could carry a future within the Council's rules. I played their game. They betrayed you. They redesigned me. And now." She looked up, eyes gleaming. "Now I take it back." The training hall lights flickered overhead as Virea paced in silence, her pulse a steady drumbeat in her ears. Cale leaned against the far wall, watching her without a word. The raw truth from the video was still thick in the air between them, too heavy for breath, too jagged for speech. "You think I've just been hiding," she finally said, turning sharply toward him. Cale didn't flinch. "I think you've been surviving. I've been holding this estate together with blood and orders. You've been pretending this child is a problem to fix." Virea stepped into his space. Her voice dropped to a near growl. "You think I asked for any of this chaos?" "No," he said. "But you're still terrified of what it means." Her palm hit his chest, hard. "I'm not afraid of anything." "Then prove it." She shoved him again. He caught her wrist. "You want to fight?" he asked. "Pick a reason. You're in my house, human. And you're in my head." She launched at him. They collided with force, training instincts kicking in. Her knee swung for his ribs, he blocked and countered. She twisted, throwing him over her shoulder. He hit the mat with a grunt, rolled, grabbed her ankle, and swept her legs out from under her. She landed hard, then flipped and straddled him before he could rise. He grabbed her by the waist and pulled her down. Their mouths met like a storm. This time wasn't rage or mistake. It was something else. Her jacket tore open. His shirt split at the shoulder. Her nails dug into his chest as his hands moved beneath her hips, sliding cloth and armor aside like barriers breaking. They moved in gasps and low moans, in silence thick with weight. The mats beneath them shifted with their rhythm. There was no performance. Just raw, blistering heat and something deeper they didn't dare name. When it ended, she lay half atop him, breath still ragged, her head tucked beneath his chin. His arm wrapped around her like instinct. "Don't say a word," she whispered. He didn't. The sun broke hours later. Viraya stirred first. She rose silently, dressing with slow, careful movements. Kale watched her from the mat, not moving. "You regret it already?" he asked softly. She paused, then without turning, said, "It meant nothing." "Right," he said, jaw tightening. "You've got a real gift for afterglow." She left the hall without looking back. That night, a second envelope arrived. Not to Kale. To her. She read it in silence, fingers trembling only slightly. Surveillance breach confirmed. Footage flagged. Council notified. She closed the file. Too late. By the next morning, Kale was in the atrium garden when the estate alarm screamed. He sprinted to the war room, finding Viraya already there. Her eyes locked onto the central holoscreen, glowing red. A looping file played on repeat, their fight in the training hall. The kiss. The aftermath. Kale stared at it, breath cold in his chest. "That's not supposed to exist." "It doesn't," Viraya said flatly. "Estate security is encrypted. This was pulled manually." "Who has access?" "6 people," she replied. "Including Relan." Kale's voice dropped. "Your husband." "Was," she said. A message flashed on the holo. A voice spoke over the room. "By order of the High Council, Commander Relan of House Verant has requested emergency tribunal review for violations of genetic sanctity and noble conduct. Accusations include cohabitation with a human, and bearing a hybrid fetus." Kale didn't speak. Viraya did. "This is war," she said quietly. She turned to Kale. "You're not just the father now," she said. "You're mine." The words hadn't even faded when the alarm screamed again. A guard burst into the room. "My lady, breach at the east gate. Armed. Multiple signatures." Viraya didn't hesitate. "Lock down lower levels. Evacuate the nursery to vault wing. Get me my gear." Kale followed her into the corridor, keeping pace. "You think Relan's coming himself?" "He is the breach," she said coldly. "Relan doesn't send warnings. He is the warning." 15 minutes later, the estate's perimeter was crawling with soldiers, none loyal to Viraya. She stood on the second-story balcony in full black combat armor, pulse pistol at her hip. Kale stood beside her, dressed in an old tactical vest, holding a steel bar. The gates below burst open. Relan stepped through like he owned the stars. "Viraya," his voice boomed. She didn't answer. "By council emergency law," he shouted, "I claim custody of subject Kale Rhine. And I order the immediate termination of the fetus under Section 9 of the Cultural Preservation Act." Kale's grip tightened. Relan's voice turned to venom. "You're not even a memory, human. Just an error we'll erase." Viraya finally spoke. "You come into my house. With intent to murder a child. It's not a child. It's a mutation," Relan snapped. "It's mine." Relan's face dropped all pretense. "You want war?" Viraya called. She turned to Kale. "Stay with me. I'm not going anywhere." Then the courtyard exploded, smoke, chaos, screaming. Kale broke away, sprinting toward the kitchen corridor where a flank had slipped in. The first soldier swung a baton. Kale ducked, slammed the pipe into the man's knee, then his throat. Another grabbed him, he reversed the grip and smashed his head into the wall. Viraya was faster. 2 guards in the east hall fell under her precise strikes. She moved like a storm. They regrouped at the central atrium. "We can't hold this," Kale said, panting. "We don't have to," she replied. "We just have to outlast them." A guard stumbled in, bleeding. "They're breaching the nursery vault." Virea's eyes went wide. They ran. The vault door was half torn open when they arrived. Inside, a medtech stood protectively over the portable gestation capsule. Relan stood beside it. Virea stepped between him and Kale. "I will kill you," she said, voice sharp. "Let me end this," he pleaded. "Claim it was your decision. You can still salvage your name." "I won't." "Then I have no choice." He raised his weapon. She lunged. Blade drawn, she slashed across his side. He fired, missed. They crashed to the ground, rolling across the floor, kicking, shouting. In the end, she won. Bloodied, breath ragged, Virea stood over Relan's unconscious body as guards restrained him. Kale stood by the capsule, hand trembling as he reached to feel its pulse. "She's strong," Virea said. "She gets it from you." "No," she whispered, her hand resting on the glowing surface. "She gets it from both of us." The high marble pillars of the council dome cast long shadows across the floor as Virea Rai stood tall beneath their cold judgment. Her lip was still split from the fight. She hadn't healed it. She wanted them to see the wound, wanted them to remember she bled. To her left stood Kale, now clean-shaven, his dark hair pulled back, wearing the formal black tunic issued to him in silence. He hadn't spoken since they entered. All around them, counselors perched in their crescent seats, expressions carved from ancient stone, robes flowing like old regrets. Lady Virea of House Rai, the central speaker intoned. "You are not here as a decorated tactician. You stand accused of civil betrayal." No reaction. "You harbored a human convict. You failed to disclose a Class 3 genetic breach. And most gravely, you engaged in intimate conduct with said human, a violation of sovereign genetic purity." Still, she said nothing. "You have dishonored your lineage." Another counselor leaned forward. "But there is still a path. Terminate the child. Renounce the pairing. Submit to gene cleansing. Your rank will be restored." Kale didn't flinch. But Virea took a step forward. "I will not." "You would sacrifice your future," another elder snapped, "for an aberration." "This aberration exists because of your negligence," she said coldly. "Because your systems failed, and you covered it up with lies." Murmurs rippled. The speaker's voice deepened. "Your punishment is decided." "No," she said. "Your choice is decided. Mine hasn't changed." "You refuse to comply." "I do." The verdict was immediate. "You are hereby stripped of house status. Military command, voided. Land titles, revoked. You no longer carry the name Rai." Virea stepped forward and placed her military crest on the stone floor. It landed with a metallic clink, like the final chime of a dying world. "Then I walk," she said. "And the human?" another voice asked, sharp. She turned. Took Kale's hand. "I stay with him." The chamber fell silent. The speaker's voice trembled. "You defy everything we built. Then maybe it wasn't worth building." They left the chamber together, hand in hand. No one followed. Back at the estate, the halls were quieter now. Relan's private guards had been dismantled, the blood washed from the nursery floor. But the pulse of change hadn't faded. Kale stood over the gestation capsule in the quiet room that had once been the estate's armory. He didn't speak, just watched the rhythmic flicker of their daughter's heartbeat. Virea entered quietly. "Told you I wasn't going anywhere," Kale said without looking. She stepped beside him, her fingers brushing his. I lost everything, he said. She shook her head. No. You kept what mattered. She placed his hand gently over her abdomen. The kick was sharp. 2 days later, the security feeds began glitching. Kale was in the upper hall when he noticed camera 3 looping, freezing on the same frame, a still image, slightly blurred. He didn't wait. Down the stairs. Through the corridor. Into the control room. Viraya was already there, suited in combat gear, pulse pistol holstered, eyes locked on the feed. You see it too? She asked. They're coming. From the west, she said. Too many for standard patrol. Reinforcements? No, she said. Assassins. Kale nodded. Then we don't let them take her. 10 minutes later, the lights cut. Emergency strips lit the floor red. Shadows stretched like claws. Kale cradled the capsule to his chest. South exit? She shook her head. They'll expect that. I can run. You stay and hold. No. We don't split. They moved together. A crash shook the corridor. One of her remaining guards screamed, then went silent. Sprinting down the hall, Kale ducked as plasma fire scorched the air. Viraya rolled across the floor, returning fire. 2 fell. Another flanked her left. She spun, elbowed his neck, and fired again. Kale reached the nursery. The capsule glowed softly. He scooped it up, heavier than it looked, and ran. A figure blocked the door. Black armor. No insignia. Kale didn't hesitate. He dropped low, shoulder-checked the man into the wall, and smashed the corner of the capsule's casing into his jaw. The soldier dropped like a puppet. Viraya met him near the rear stairwell. Blood streaked her cheek. Her blade was gone. Back gates blown, he said. Then we take the woods. On foot? No other way. They sprinted. Just before the rear garden wall, for enemies waited. Viraya didn't stop. First shot took the leader in the chest. Second missed. Third clipped another shoulder. Kale dropped, shielding the capsule behind a stone column. Heat scorched his back. She moved like fire. The last 2 rushed. One swung. She ducked. Drove her elbow into his gut. He fell gasping. The last man grabbed Kale by the throat. Kale smashed his knee up, cracked his attacker's skull with the capsule again. It ended fast. They didn't wait. Through the broken gate. Into the dark woods. They didn't stop running until their legs gave out. They collapsed beside a moss-covered ridge. Roots curled above like ancient fingers. Kale set the capsule down gently between them. Their backs touched. We stay, he said. Let them come. No, she replied, breathing hard. We don't win by fighting here. We win by surviving. He looked at her. Where do we go? There are outposts. Hidden settlements. Rebel cells that don't care about bloodlines. You trust them? No, she said. But I trust you. He turned toward her. You know what this means now, right? She nodded slowly. We're not fugitives. We're threats. She looked down at the capsule. The soft light flickered. And then, another kick. For the first time in days, Viraya smiled. Yes, she whispered. They didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the forest set Kale on edge. Every shift in the shadows had her hand on her weapon. But they stayed awake. Together. By dawn, they had crossed the lower basin of Valther's edge. Mud clung to their boots. Their clothes were soaked. Kale had a cut above his eye that wouldn't stop bleeding. Viraya limped, but refused help. By the third day, their food was gone. Rainwater and bitter roots weren't enough. Kale pushed through it, but he saw it, how her balance slipped, how she winced when she thought he wasn't looking. When she dropped to one knee, he stepped in. "You need rest. I can keep going. You're starting labor." She froze. "No," she whispered. "Too soon." He caught her before she fell again. A crumbling outpost loomed just ahead, old, forgotten, carved into the mountainside. They made it with minutes to spare. The doors creaked open. Dust and silence inside. He laid her on a blanket made from cargo mesh. She was shaking. "It's starting," she gasped. "Too fast. Too soon. I've got you. You've never done this." "Neither have you," he replied. "We improvise." She gripped his wrist, fierce, desperate. "Don't let me die." "You won't." Labor hit hard. Sharp. Brutal. She screamed once, then bit into his shoulder, drawing blood. Her body writhed. He held her. Whispered to her. Wiped her brow. And then, crying. A shrill, perfect cry. He caught the tiny body in trembling hands. Green-skinned. Small. Alive. He laid her on Viraya's chest. She looked down, eyes wide, breath ragged. "Raylia," she whispered. Kale touched the child's back. "She's real." "You're the father," Viraya said faintly, eyes closing. "And now I've finally seen you." Morning broke slow over the old cliffside clinic. Viraya lay on a salvaged cot, arms wrapped around the newborn sleeping against her chest. Her green skin shimmered faintly in the pale light, her hair matted with sweat, her lips cracked but calm. Kale sat near the far wall, bandaged shoulder still sore from where she bit down during labor. He hadn't moved all night. Just watched the rise and fall of their daughter's breath. A part of him still didn't believe this was real. "You're still here," she said softly, eyes opening. "Told you," he murmured. "I'm not going anywhere." She looked down at Raylia, then back at him. "I believe you this time." He gave a tired smile. "Progress." She reached out without another word. He crossed the room, sat beside her. One arm curled around her waist, the other cupping the back of Raylia's tiny head. Silence settled like peace. Then the question came. "What happens now?" she asked. He didn't lie. "I don't know. Reland's gone, but the council, they're still out there. They'll never stop hunting us." She exhaled. "Then we don't stay here." "No," he said. "But we don't run either. Not like before." She raised an eyebrow. "Then what?" He met her eyes. "We build something they can't destroy." It started small. 2 days later, they left the ruined clinic with only what they could carry. Raylia was strapped against Kale's chest, swaddled tightly, sleeping to the rhythm of his heartbeat. Viraya led the way, still sore but walking with purpose. They moved carefully, through ravines and dense woodlands, across ruined roads and abandoned trade lanes. They spoke to no one. Trusted no one. But the rumors found them. There were whispers of neutral zones. Outposts where the old rebellion had once thrived. Settlements off-grid. Farming towns tucked between mountain ranges where the council's eyes couldn't reach. They followed those rumors. And at each stop, the same thing happened. People stared. Some turned away. Some spit. But many just watched the green-skinned woman with fire in her step and the human man at her side. Watched the tiny bundle nestled between them. A child that shouldn't exist. A symbol that wouldn't die. By the time the bounty was issued, immediate retrieval of genetic unit R1LA, Class 5 bioanomaly, subject, Raylia Rhine, it was too late. The fringe sectors had already begun sheltering them. Old fighters gave them safe houses. Rogue doctors offered them medical supplies. Underground transmitters spread the word faster than any council could block. Something had begun. 6 weeks later, in the heart of the Nerith Valley, they built a home. It wasn't much. Just 4 walls, a patch of land, and a roof Kale patched together with old solar tiles and salvaged trade metal. But it was theirs. Kale spent his days chopping wood, fixing what little tech passed through the area, and reinforcing the perimeter with quiet paranoia. Virea trained each morning, still razor-sharp, still fierce, but she also grew things. Herbs. Vegetables. Something to feed more than just the body. They named the house Nera. In old Valerics, it meant, no longer hunted. At night, Raylia slept between them, her tiny chest rising in rhythm with theirs. Sometimes Kale would whisper to her about stars. Sometimes Virea would hum an old lullaby she swore she'd forgotten. Sometimes, they didn't say anything. Just lay close, hands tangled under the sheets, skin pressed warm against skin. It wasn't about passion anymore. It was presence. When they moved together in the dark, it was no longer chaos. It was choice. Years passed. When Raylia took her first steps, she did so beneath the red-glow canopy trees Kale had planted near the garden. She tumbled straight into his arms, laughing. Virea stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes shining. "She's not the future they wanted," she said. Kale smiled. "She's better." 12 years later, the world began to fracture. The Republic of Valera, once a bastion of rigid order, teetered on the edge. Outer colonies declared secession. Former noble houses broke ranks. Human rights factions rose in the shadows, radical and loud. And in the middle of it all stood a girl. 12 years old. Barefoot. Calm. Her skin shimmered faint green in the broken light of an abandoned trade dome. Her eyes burned bright with truth. Her name was Raylia Rhine. Across from her stood dozens of soldiers, pure-blood Valerics, armed and armored. Behind them, the infamous General Vorlax, once commander of the Third Campaign, now the self-declared savior of Valeran purity. He sneered. "You shouldn't exist." Raylia didn't blink. "I'm what your empire created. You think a child can stop a war?" She stepped forward. Not a child. A symbol. The soldiers hesitated. Because even they had heard the whispers. That this girl could disrupt neural syncs just by speaking. That riots had calmed when she stepped into their midst. That she was impossible, and undeniable. "You can shoot me," she said. "You can call me impure. But if you do, every free zone will rise. Not because I'm a weapon, but because I'm proof." General Vorlax barked a laugh. "Proof of what?" "That unity already happened," she said. "And you're just late to the future." A soft ping echoed through the dome. Hidden cameras came to life. Every major channel across Valera blinked to her face. Every outer world tuned in. The girl who shouldn't have existed. And watched as, one by one, the soldiers lowered their weapons. Vorlax's voice cracked. "Hold your line. Fire." No one moved. A rifle dropped. Another soldier fell to one knee. Raylia turned to the main feed, her voice steady. "My name is Raylia Rhine. I was born in exile. I've bled for both sides of this planet. And I say this, no more purity. No more lies. No more walls." Then, softly, like a prayer. "We already won. You just didn't feel it yet." 2 hours later, General Vorlax surrendered. The rebellion fractured. The council's silence collapsed. And the world began to breathe again. The house in Nera still stood. It had weathered more than some cities, raids, storms, memories. Time itself. Viraya stood on the threshold, older now. The green of her skin had softened, threaded with faint silver along her temples. Her braid was loose, eyes sharp as ever. She stared out across the hills where dusk painted fire across the sky. Inside, laughter echoed. Raylia was chasing a malfunctioning scout drone down the hall, her bare feet thudding softly against the wooden floor. The device had been scavenged from an old war outpost, rewired by Raylia herself. It spun and buzzed like it had a mind of its own. She moved like her mother, fast, fluid. But she laughed like her father. Viraya turned at the sound of boots behind her. Kale. Hands dirty from tending the new irrigation trench. Gloves tucked into his belt. He stepped beside her without a word, slipping one arm around her waist. They stood that way for a long time. "She'll leave soon," Viraya said, quiet. Kale nodded. "She should. She's better than us. She is us." A pause. "Do you think," she asked, "we did the right thing?" Kale didn't answer at first. Then he looked out at the wild garden, at the lights in the distance from new settlements forming, at the mountain ridges that once hid them in exile. "We survived," he said. "But more than that, we built." Viraya smiled faintly. "Would you change anything?" she asked. He glanced at her. "Not even the worst parts." She tilted her head. "Even the prison?" He nodded. "Even the day they told me I was the father. That was the day my life started." She turned to him, touched his cheek. Then they kissed. It wasn't the fire of survival anymore. It was quiet. Full. Whole. They stood in the doorway as if it were a gate to something sacred, his hands at her hips, her forehead resting against his. Their breathing fell into rhythm, the soft breeze brushing strands of silver from her braid. Later that evening, as Raylia tinkered with the drone by the hearth, Viraya watched her with a quiet gaze. She had grown tall. Her features had sharpened, half Kale, half her, but her eyes had never changed. They still held that quiet fire. The knowing. She would leave soon. Raylia had already received word from the newly formed Coalition Council. They wanted her as an envoy. A bridge between systems. A symbol of what came after the purity laws. After the war. Viraya had nodded when she told her. Had given her the blessing she never got from her own mother. But that night, alone with Kale, she wept for the first time in years. "She's going to be more than we ever were," Viraya said. Kale had held her in silence. 2 weeks later, Raylia left Nara. The day was soft with mist. Her gear was light, just a satchel, a recharged navband, and her mother's old crest repurposed as a pendant. Kale watched her from the ridge, one hand on Viraya's shoulder. "Come back when you can," Viraya said, voice low. Raylia smiled. "You won't even know I'm gone." Kale raised an eyebrow. "You're not exactly quiet." She grinned. "I get that from you." Then she was gone. Over the ridge. Into the new world. 2 seasons passed. The Republic signed a mutual aid treaty with Earth's border factions. Genetic laws were revised. The word impure was scrubbed from legal code. Viraya spent her mornings tending to the garden. Kale built a greenhouse from scavenged alloys and shaped wood. He called it the second bridge, because it connected more than just plants. Peace was fragile. Always would be. But it was real. Until the message came. A single encrypted pulse. Kale saw it first. Projected on the inner wall of the comm room, flickering blue. Subject, Rina classification match detected. Status, extraction ordered. Location, Nara. His pulse dropped. Viraya entered behind him, reading the words without speaking. "She's not here," Kale said. They think she is. Then they're coming. Viraya's jaw tightened. We can't outrun it again. No. She stepped forward, touched the panel. Then looked at him. I won't lose this place. Then we don't fight alone. Kale sent the call. Within 12 hours, messages flooded in. From hilltop signal posts, from renegade freighters, from old rebels in hiding. Word spread that someone was trying to erase the place where it all began. And no one was going to let that happen. By the next sunset, Nara was surrounded. Not by enemies. By allies. Farmers. Hackers. Former soldiers. Peacekeepers from distant sectors. Children like Raylia, born of two bloods. They came without being asked. Because some things mattered more than fear. Kale stood on the balcony, looking down at them. Viraya stood beside him, armored again for the first time in years. I don't want to fight, she said. You won't, Kale said. You'll lead. She looked at him sharply. You really believe that? He smiled. I built bridges, remember? She looked out over the fields, where tents were pitched and solar lamps blinked on one by one like new stars. You think they'll actually come? She asked. I know they will. And he was right. Because at dawn, the sky opened. Dropships. Dark. Fast. But the people below didn't scatter. They stood. When the first wave landed, they found Nara silent. Then, from every path, people stepped forward, not armed, not armored, but present. One by one. From the house, Viraya emerged. Kale beside her. You're trespassing, she said calmly to the lead officer. He raised a scanner. No genetic unit registered here. She smiled slightly. No child. No crime. But before he could respond, another voice cut in. A feed projected above them. Encrypted channel breach. Override accepted. Signal origin, unregistered unit, R1LA. The officer's device blinked red. Then a voice echoed across the clearing. I told you, Raylia's voice said, we already won. You just didn't feel it yet. A ripple moved through the crowd. One by one, the invaders dropped their weapons. Then, for the first time in decades, the council revoked a standing bounty. Viraya looked at Kale, stunned. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. They had survived again. But this time, they hadn't just protected Nara. They'd saved the future it represented. The stars above Nara that night pulsed brighter than usual, like they were closer somehow, like the sky itself had shifted. Kale sat outside the house on the stone steps, arms crossed over his knees. He watched the soft lights scattered across the hills, the temporary camps, the sentry posts, the watchfires. It had been quiet for hours. Peaceful. Suspiciously peaceful. Then the door creaked open behind him. Viraya stepped out, still armored, though her shoulders had relaxed. She sat beside him without a word. You should sleep, he said. I'll sleep when I'm sure we're not dreaming. He smiled faintly. You think dreams come with drone surveillance? She smirked. Depends on the dream. They sat in silence for a long time, listening to the insects hum in the tall grass and the faint static from the outer perimeter scans. Viraya reached out slowly, took Kale's hand. This wasn't supposed to happen, she said. We weren't supposed to survive, let alone raise a daughter that started a war just by existing. Kale gave a soft exhale. That's the thing about revolutions. They don't start with weapons. They start with people you can't ignore. Raylia was never quiet. She got that from you. She got everything from both of us, Viraya whispered. Far beyond the hills, the Coalition Council had passed the Unity Accord. Purity laws were officially nullified. All charges against Raylia, past, present, or future, were dropped. The bounty rescinded. The High Council itself was being dismantled. What would rise in its place remained uncertain. But for the first time in decades, uncertainty wasn't terrifying. It was promising. The world was changing. Not because of the Council. Not even because of Kale or Viraya. Because of one girl. And the belief that she didn't need to be perfect. Just real. 3 months later, a new summit was called. Not in the domed cities or council towers. But in an abandoned trade outpost, repurposed with scavenged solar rigs and fold-in seating. Leaders from former rebel groups arrived. So did former Noble House representatives. Border planet governors. Human liaisons. And in the middle of it all, Raylia Rhine, now 13, stood before them barefoot in a stitched tunic and a pendant at her throat made from her mother's broken military crest. They asked her to speak. She didn't give them a speech. She told them a story. Of a woman who fought her own people to protect a life she didn't choose. Of a man who came to build bridges and instead built a family. Of a child born not from strategy, but mistake, and how that mistake became a revolution. Unity isn't a document, Raylia said. It's a decision. They stood when she finished. Not because protocol told them to. But because history had. And the very next day, construction began on what they called the Nara Foundation. A new governing body built on coalition, not caste. Valerics would no longer be ruled by those who believed themselves pure. It would be led by those willing to share it. And through it all, Kale and Viraya stayed at the edges, never stepping into the spotlight, never seeking credit. But their names were whispered. Sometimes spoken aloud in classrooms. Sometimes etched into stone under bridges. Always together. One night, Kale woke to a sound at the door. He rose quietly, pulse alert. Raylia stood there in the dark, taller now, eyes gleaming. Couldn't sleep, she said. Storm coming. Maybe. He stepped aside, let her in. Viraya stirred from the cot, eyes half open. You okay? She asked. Raylia nodded. Then walked over, climbed between them on the bed like she had when she was 5. I just needed to remember, she whispered. Remember what? Kale asked. That I'm still a kid, she said. Viraya smiled in the dark. You always will be. The next morning, Raylia left again. But this time, the goodbye didn't hurt. Because they knew now. She didn't belong to them. She belonged to what came next. Years passed. The world grew. Changed. Bent in ways they couldn't always follow. And one day, on a far-off border planet with red sand and twin moons, Raylia stood in front of another crowd. This time, she wore armor. Not for war, but as emblem. She lifted a banner stitched with 2 halves, one human, one Valerics. The symbol of what had come to be known as the New Accord. She was no longer just Raylia. She was a leader. A diplomat. And more than anything, a reminder. A reminder that unity didn't mean sameness. It meant choice. The footage of that moment was broadcast across sectors. Kale and Viraya watched from the old house, surrounded by green fields and rebuilt walls. She walks like you, Kale said. No, Viraya replied. She walks like someone who knows exactly who she is. Later that night, Kale found an old data drive, one he'd never plugged in. It had dust from a decade ago. When he inserted it, a message played. If you're watching this, it means you survived. It means she survived. That means I didn't fail. Dr. Solon Vex. Kale didn't cry. He just let the silence finish the message. He left the drive on the mantel. Beside it, a carving Raylia had made when she was 10. 3 names. Kale. Virea. Raelia. And beneath them, one word. Built. The rains came late that year in Nera. Gentle, warm, soaking into the soil Kale had spent over a decade coaxing into something fertile. He stood barefoot in the garden, sleeves rolled up, rain trailing down his arms as he adjusted the irrigation pipes. Inside, Virea leaned against the doorway, watching him like she always had, quiet, sharp-eyed, full of a calm that only came with time and war behind her. "You still do this like we have a full village to feed," she called out. Kale straightened, hands dripping. "Hope's gotta start somewhere." She shook her head, amused. "You say that every season." He grinned. "Still true, isn't it?" She stepped outside, the rain darkening her tunic in slow patches. She didn't care. Her feet splashed next to his in the mud, and for a moment they were younger again, two fugitives hiding a miracle. "Any word?" he asked. "She's in the far Delta district," Virea said. "Helping negotiate the demilitarization zones. Still moving faster than both of us combined." She always did. They stood there in the garden as the rain softened to mist. Beyond the hills, drone clusters buzzed faintly overhead, civilian now, not surveillance. Times had changed. Virea took Kale's hand and pressed it to her side. "No child this time. Just heartbeat and warmth." "I thought I'd spend my life protecting what we lost," she murmured. He turned to her. "And? Turns out we spent it creating what we never had." They kissed in the rain, slow and sure. Not out of hunger or fear, but because even after all these years, nothing else felt like home. That evening, they sat beneath the porch light on the back steps. A message arrived through the relay. Ambassador Raelia Rhine requests return to Nera. ETA, 3 days. Virea lowered the tablet slowly. "She's coming back." Kale nodded. "It's time." 3 days later, she returned. She wasn't a child anymore. She wasn't even the girl who had once stood barefoot before armed soldiers. She was a woman now, dressed in diplomat's robes stitched from rebel banners, council silk, and trade world hemp. Her eyes still held the same fire. Her arms wrapped around them both like they were the only things keeping her grounded. The people of Nera gathered at the edge of the garden. Not as soldiers. Not as followers. As witnesses. Virea stood on the porch beside her daughter. Kale stepped forward to speak. "I was told once that I'd built bridges," he said. "But the truth is, I only started one." He turned to Raelia. "You finished it." That night, they lit the fire bowl at the center of the estate. People danced, not in celebration of a battle won, but of a life made. No walls. No titles. No judgment. Just unity. Later, as stars emerged one by one, Virea and Kale watched their daughter from the edge of the crowd. She laughed in the circle of dancers, barefoot again, dirt between her toes, a crown of woven bark on her head. Someone had called her high flame. She hadn't corrected them. Kale leaned toward Virea. "We did this." "No," she corrected. "We survived this." He smiled. "And what we did after." She reached for his hand. "That's what changed the world." That night, as the fires burned low, the family sat on the porch together. Not running. Not hiding. Just living. And above them, the stars didn't seem so far anymore. And that is the story of Kale Rhine, Virea Rai, and Raelia, the child born from error, raised in exile, and destined to rebuild a fractured world. They didn't start as heroes. They didn't even start as allies. They were strangers thrown together by a mistake the system tried to erase. But from that chaos came something impossible: connection, rebellion, family. Raelia didn't become a symbol because she was perfect. She became one because she refused to be anything but real. A child of two worlds. A bridge between them. And that's what changed everything. Because in the end, change never starts with permission. It starts with one person saying, enough. One person refusing to vanish. One child choosing to stand where they were told to kneel. And if this story moved you, if it made you think, or cry, or whisper, just one more part, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Because stories like this deserve to be heard. And we've got so many more to tell. Until next time, stay curious, stay human, and keep building bridges.